couple of things that you particularly highlighted in the story about becoming an overnight speaking sensation, which is how I'm now from now on referring to that story.
Good narrative. I love that.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. I've got loads of these for you.
Night and there you are. No. Okay.
You come up from the floor. There's smoke. I can see it.
I
see it.
You'll say that.
Lieke in big lights in the background as you come out. I think fear of failure is something as humans that obviously it really holds us back. But also, I think the less you do push your own limits, the larger sense or fear of failure you actually have. So it's that cycle of keeping yourself small perpetuates itself. I know, because I feel like I've been tested in life, I have this overarching sense of, well, all right, I can try this, because even if it doesn't go as I expected, and I think, again, if we could tune into expectation management in so many senses, in relationships, for yourself, allow things to be as they are. But I really think if you can tune into that sense of, you know what, I figured out more difficult things than this is going to be fine, then you are able to slowly and surely push your own boundaries and just go a bit further. And you will always surprise yourself. You can always go and endure and deal with so much more. You just have to accept it's going to get uncomfortable. And even that's okay.
Failing is great in that sense, because it proves to you that you're still standing the next day. It doesn't stop your life. You failed. Everybody laughed at you. You were ridiculous. You were an idiot. So what? You're still there. So it builds the trust in yourself.
So, yeah. And I feel like...
And I must say that by coming older, it's also great that you less and less care about the opinion of others. That's something that's great about being older. I don't care what
it's
people
like a
think.
breath of fresh air, isn't it? It's almost like someone physically took off chains. When I realized I didn't have to care about what other people think, unless there are people who are close to me that I love, that I cherish, and even then you take a balanced view. It was like being set free and learning to trust in your own sense of self.
And it can be forced by something that goes wrong.
Absolutely.
Like, for instance, I had this perfect family with 4 children, perfect little family. Everybody was like jealous, and I was like trying to get that. And then the eldest child had so much difficulties that it was evidently for everybody that it wasn't perfect.
Yes.
And that kind of like took off the stress. Yeah. So my family is not perfect. Go on to the other families to see how they're doing. But this one is done. And now we can just start living and not keeping up appearances. Yeah.
And be real.
Yeah, and be real.
And I think the freedom that comes with that, and the bedrock of foundational confidence, I think is so impactful. So would you say that your message to women listening to the podcast is just try, make that conscious decision to try and take each step?
Yeah, it's a conscious decision, I think, really. And I even remember that having at a certain time so much difficulties and things thrown at me, and laying in my bed and really looking at me. And I'm not sure if other people do that, but for me it's a great defense mechanism that I don't know really how to say it in English, but deassociate yourself from yourself.
Yes.
So I'm like that actress, and I'm in bed thinking, how am I gonna so I don't really feel the emotions, because that would be too overwhelming and it would kill me. But how would somebody with my characteristics deal with this problem? What would she say tomorrow? What would she do tomorrow? Oh, she would get out of bed early and make breakfast for the whole family. Okay, then that's what I'm gonna do. You know, so I'm becoming kind of like, I play with myself in that sense. A different character.
Yes, I understand that. And do you find that you make your business decisions in the same way? Do you make your personal decisions and business decisions in the same way, insofar as the strategy or your method, if you like?
I do that more and more. I used to work with men. That went great. And now I work with a lot of women, and that's for me much more difficult.
Yeah.
Because there's so much going on underneath the skin, and that's not how I am. I'm very straightforward, very Dutch. And so I remember just last year, it was really hard, and I was at the point of, epping, and you should never ep at night. You should just never ep at night. Never.
When you get the urge, you've got to put the phone down.
And then I was laying in bed, and my husband was sleeping, and I was like, what if I was really a great CEO, director, and I was on a TV show, and everybody would admire me as being such a great leader. What would my action be?
Yeah.
So the next day, I upped the group as this great leader, and they were, "Oh, you solved that so well." And I was like,
yes,
it wasn't
I
me.
did.
It was
Yes.
my alter ego or something.
It was Lieke Fierce. Yeah.
And I know it's stupid, and I know it's a weird escape mechanism, but sometimes it's good to stand back from yourself and your own emotions and just look at it, like you're a character in a book or something, and just turn the page.
I actually see it as increasingly vital. I couldn't run or sustain my life if I wasn't sort of able to zoom out of myself a little bit. And actually, it keeps me in check. I keep myself in check in those ways, because I sometimes feel that in great ways and in deeply upsetting ways, one of the hardest characteristics or traits that I see about, say, the people around me is they're not able to see themselves how other people see them. Mostly, I will say, with women, in a devastatingly, their sense of self is so much devastatingly more negative than anyone else would ever consider. Also, when it comes to blind spots, it's tough to say, yeah, I can be a bit of an asshole at times. You know what I mean? And it's tough to own that you've offended someone or hurt someone, or you've possibly disrupted a dynamic. I feel strongly we as human beings, I think we would benefit from curating that skill. Yep. And also that there's this notion that direct conversation is confrontational. Yep. And I am for sure direct, and I've had feedback on that.
Okay.
Not all positive.
Well, you're in a good spot here in the Netherlands, because we like that.
Oh, I have flown here. But of course I have to own that there is an obligation on me in terms of my delivery. I think it's, on the other hand, you've got people who go, oh, well, I'm just a straight shooter. Well, yeah, again, there's a fine line between straight shooter and asshole. So what are you choosing today? And that is on you, and you own that. How do we normalize direct conversation? Because to me, it's such a waste of time to go all around the houses. Also, I feel a sense of, is it because you don't know your needs and so you can't speak on them? Or is it you've got a loop in your head and you're being silently resentful and things are building up and you can't get it out? How do we make it okay to say, hey, I don't appreciate that, or actually we need to do it like this, without getting offended or triggering?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually.
Could you solve that problem for society, Lieke?
Yeah,
that would be super.
That'd be great. No, I can only say my own experience. Talk about my own experience in that sense. Being offended, I'm not easily offended, but I'm also not keen on opening up or getting or giving apologies. That's something that I often have people who did something to me really bad. Yeah. And then they say, I want to talk about it with you. And I don't give them that chance. And that's a weakness of mine. And I know it's not a very good, nice thing. But I just don't have the time. I already know your apology. I know what you're going to say. And I know it's going to be fake. Yeah. So leave it. You know, I'm too direct for that. And that's a weak spot, because you should give people a chance to start again and to explain themselves. But I know that's very hard. I can only say that I find that really hard. I like directness. That's why I like working with men. I mean, men would say, oh, I hate your shoes, or I love your shoes. Yes. And when a woman says, oh, nice shoes, are they new? Yes. You never know if they like them or not, or if it's meant or not.
It always feels double-handed. Or if someone goes, oh, interesting.
Yeah, something like that. And
is it interesting?
I have a very great example, and it's not in a argument or whatever, but we had this agreement, or this appointment with 4 women, and 3 Dutch women, 1 American woman, and it was postponed because one of the ladies, she wrote on the email, I'm sorry, no, we have a meeting this Thursday, but I have a funeral that I have to attend, so unfortunately I cannot make it on Thursday. So the first woman said, okay, not Thursday, then could you perhaps go Wednesday or Friday? What would be convenient for you? And I wrote, well, for me, everything is fine. I can go Wednesday. And then the American woman responded, hi there. Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. I hope you're fine. Oops. Can I get my email back?
Yeah. Also that. Also terribly sorry.
Yeah, that as well. Yeah. So that was kind of like, politeness is often also a way to act with each other and to pause. And I learned to do that because of that email. So now I type an email or WhatsApp to somebody, and before I send it, I go back to the beginning and say, okay, can I make this something? And my Dutch heart says it's a waste of time. But my professional heart and my human heart says it's good to every now and then pause and take a wider look. Again, there you go, looking from a little distance to it, and what can I add, and how can I wrap this up in a more nice manner. And so I try to work on that, and I also try to work on giving people the opportunity to talk about things that happened, because I was very like, it happened, okay, it's fine, just move on. I'm not holding grudges, but I don't need to hear your excuses or whatever. It's good, I know why you did it. Don't say you're sorry, because I know you're not. And
you know you're not. And
and that's not good. That's not something I'm proud of, but it's how I feel it inside.
No, that I understand. And what I find difficult in that circumstance, it's when I know that this is probably a repeated pattern, and we're going to bump against the same issue time and time again.
Of course.
And so that I tend, yes, and that's when I sort of lose patience with an apology, or it feels like it's going to be disingenuous.
Mm-hmm. But I always had a business together with my husband. Me and my husband goes very well. But when I ever had a client or somebody I worked with I didn't like, I just could say, okay, I don't like you. I'm not going to even bother. I'm just going to find somebody else to work with. And the world is so big. But of course, when you're in a more structural organization or whatever, you see somebody every day, it's a whole different story. And I have that now as being the director of Women in Tech. I have this team of 30 women that I need to speak to again every day. So I cannot just say, okay, doodles.
Jesus, I'm out. Yeah.
Come on, get off it. No, you have to find a way to make it work. And for me, that's a whole new dynamic. But I love that because it's learning for me again. And I love to learn my whole life through. It's another role again.
It's another phase of growth, another phase of evolution. I read in a book, it was Mel Robbins' book, and she said you are required to be and evolve into a different person for each phase of your life. Yeah. And when I looked back, that resonated on such a degree, and it was probably one of the things that stood out from the whole book. And it was about moving forward and making change. I think what I have enjoyed so much about the bits of time we've spent together is how, for someone who is, and I'm using this purely for terms of efficiency, it's not a phrase I particularly love, but I think people know exactly what I mean. For such a badass, you have also been unbelievably vulnerable and shared so much with me about so many different sides of yourself and so many of what you have found challenging and your struggles and your mindsets and moments, even when perhaps you judge yourself or you felt judged by others. I mean, I can't imagine receiving that letter from the hospital in that tone, shaming and judging you. Yeah. I mean, it must have been very hard not to internalize that kind of feedback. What kind of role do you think vulnerability plays as a woman who is unquestionably held up as a leader and as an example to other women, and frankly, very rightly so? How important is it to you to demonstrate to other women exactly what you say, this rawness, this authenticity, which to me is such a hallmark of who you are?
I think it comes with great responsibility, and being vulnerable is a responsibility to show people that you are, because just being this great untouchable leader that never cries or never has feelings, I don't feel that to be a very good role model, and I don't feel it to be very fair as well. And it's difficult because I remember having this great woman that I really admired. She was my big hero. She was on the internet, on the Twitter. She was a Dutch politician, and she was really, in my world, she was really it. And then I remember her seeing on the Facebook, and I followed her. She followed me back. And all of a sudden, she had a picture of her table in the kitchen. And said, "Oh, what a terrible night. I'm crying at the kitchen table all night." I was like, she crying? Yeah. And my whole world stumbled. I was
Yeah.
like, that's not, if she's crying, then the whole world is lost.
Well, that's it. We're
Yeah.
screwed.
Yeah, we're
We
screwed.
should all go home.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it's very refreshing to see that everybody is just human, and that's when you take your distance from the world and you look through the centuries and I look at the life of my grandmother or maybe my great grandchildren. This is just, and you should be aware that don't make your life too small in that sense and too unimportant, because the daily things matter, even if in the big way of centuries it's nothing. But yeah, looking at that, it shows that you can be vulnerable, and we're all people. Every person is just one person and has feelings in that sense. So I really tried to be that, and I must say that I really was unwilling to take on the role of leader in that sense, because we always learn to diminish yourself.
Yeah, talk yourself down.
Not
And
that
who
big,
am
I'm
I
not that
to?
important. Who am
And
I?
who are they going to think I am?
Yeah,
You know?
and then at a certain point you see that people expect it of you, and that it's not fun anymore to diminish it, because then it's unclear for them. So you just take that role and say, okay, I can be your role model if you want to, and then I shape up and do something about it, and then take that responsibility. But yeah, I love to share the vulnerability as well, also because I know that it helped me very much. I have been in a very, very deep depression with anxiety disorder at a certain point, and I didn't want to go out anymore. And it really helped me seeing that there were other people who had the same thing, who were not crazy people, because before I had that, I thought that everybody who had something psychologically was some weak idiot.
No, there was the stigma around mental health was such that
I'm honest about
said
that, but that's
something about person individually, and now of course we understand
there must be the
so
weaker
much
persons or something, and then it hits you and you're like, what? Oh, I'm a weak person, what? And then you see that there are strong persons who also encountered that, and it's got nothing to do with weak or strong, and that also you can overcome your fears in that sense. So that really helped me. So yeah, I love to share those stories as well with people, because I know there are a lot of women especially, but also men, struggling with anxiety, with depression, with fear of life. And I have one example, if I may.
Please.
I had these anxiety attacks where I was like, maybe it was hyperventilation, I'm not sure, but it scared the hell out of me anyway. And I remember being on live television in the Netherlands, and it was just at the point that I was getting better and better. And I talked to myself as if I was somebody else. Girls, shape up, sit there, be strong. And I know sitting there and the cameras were on me, and there was a table with a lot of guests, so I wasn't speaking at the moment, but when they were speaking, I kind of like felt the world floating away, everything getting silent. And everything was shifting, and I was like, "Oh, there we go." And I was like, "Oh God, I'm gonna faint or something." Yeah. And then I had this voice in me, "Okay, faint." And then what happens? Just faint. Okay, let it come. And I was really so stressed, and anxiety was so big. Then it went, and it was great. And then I came home, and I looked at the television show, and really closely watching. You didn't see anything.
You didn't see anything.
Like, huh? I was looking again. You have to see something, that I'm in a great anxiety there, but you didn't see. And that gave so much confidence. And I want to share that with people, that your inner world is so different from what people see. And even if they would have seen it, who cares? Faint on national television. Do that once. Then at least you've been there. You've done that. You can tell your grandchildren some great stories, and you face that fear. So it will never be a fear again.
And again, you get up.
You get up?
Literally in this sense.
Yeah,
literally
exactly.
in this sense.
Yeah, get up.
And figuratively. And I think it's never the failure. It's all about the comeback. And I think what is so powerful about what you just said, and I would invite every woman listening to this, is don't be afraid to own the role you've been cast. Don't be afraid to step up and feel yourself. Consciously become that leader. Consciously understand, because again, it's going to the reality of it. We can hold ourselves back and say, am I good enough? Am I worthy? Which is really why we're not fully embracing and stepping up into those roles, or allowing ourselves to within our minds. Or we can say, well, the reality is this is the role I've been assigned. Exactly what you say, there are other people looking up to me, whether I choose to step into these shoes fully and embrace these shoes or not. Give yourself permission. I think that is such a beautiful example of consciously stepping into that. And again, referencing this sense of zooming out of yourself and being able to connect with yourself in that way, it gives you tools like being able to self-soothe. if you're about to faint on national television, to give yourself the sense of resolve to know who you are when you receive a terrible letter like the letter from the hospital. But to move, the point being to move through these difficult situations and these challenges. And again, the more you give yourself that space and you allow yourself to own it and not care what people will think, not care that this will look different from a version or an iteration of you that had been in the past.
Exactly.
Move forward. And you mentioned earlier about...
The worst judge of your life is yourself.
No question. Yeah. No question.
Yeah.
No question. No one else is judging you anyway.
They don't even care. That's what I came to learn.
They're pretty busy with themselves.
But they don't even care.
Exactly that. Yeah. And I think it's so interesting. And also, it's that thing, don't take advice from somebody who's doing less than you and who's not walking the walk that you value and respect. Exactly. I find that very, very, very difficult, to the point where I'm like, should I be flying this plane? I think I probably should. I probably got this. You look tired. I should do this.
And the fun of getting older is that you see that everybody is just doing something. There's nobody who has secretly got a manual of life and knows where to go or what to do. Even the highest politicians, and I talk to some of them, and I even coach some of them, which is really revelating for me, because then I see that even they have their anxieties, and they look like they know everything and they cannot do everything. But there's no manual of life. Everybody's just doing, and
they're playing a
part.
Older
learns you more and more. They're playing a part.
They're playing a part, and some people do it more convincingly than others. I will never forget sitting in my early corporate career, sitting in meetings, because I didn't really have a sense that I was smart. I have since learned that I am. But at that time, thank you.
Dare to say it.
Do you promise? No. But no, I really do know it. I have learned it. I've really internalized it. No, but I didn't know that at the time. And I remember sitting in these meetings and, there would be all this stuff going about and, the back and forth and whatever the issue was. And I remember sitting there thinking, I must have massively missed the point of what they're discussing because I seem to understand what they're saying. So I must have got this right. It must be so complex. It has gone way over my head. I don't know what's going on here because I clearly don't possess. So and by the way, they're going to find that out pretty soon. So, my time here, I'm on borrowed time. And then I realized that I was absolutely understanding everything that was going on. It actually isn't rocket science. So, if you'll have a sense of awareness and you're keeping your eyes open and whatnot. And often the people who sounded as though they perhaps did know it the most and were the sharpest tools in the room and the box and the toolbox, not necessarily.
I remember being with my husband very often in the beginning when he was the great keynote speaker and I was just there, assisting him and being there. This. And I know these big male CEOs coming up to me afterwards asking me questions that they did not want to ask my husband, but with me they felt safe asking them because they had no clue. And like, do you know what he was talking about? Yeah, and they didn't want to look
stupid in front of him.
Yeah, and it's very often the case if you ask a question in a meeting, then if you notice very closely, there are always some male colleagues who are like, oh, thank God she's asking that. And I get an easy answer.
But isn't that interesting? And as a woman, I think, I'm sure somebody's going to have something to say about this, but I do think there are ways of being a woman that are perfectly okay and are okays of being a woman that we can use to our advantage when it comes to actually demonstrating our value and demonstrating our rightful places within the workplace, within organizations. And it's okay to own that we perhaps can and should approach things a little differently.
We should, and the word owning is very, very wise chosen because I often feel that I have a lot of discussions, of course, with the women in tech thing, like women can choose tech. If they want to, they can choose tech. In the Netherlands, there is no law forbidding you to choose tech. So why are you empowering them? Why do they need to be empowered? They have free choice. Why force them to go in tech? I force you to go in tech. No, but there's a whole society which is built in such a way that, that's a long story. I'm not going to go into that. But
that's the other podcast we're going to do.
Yeah,
that's our next episode.
Exactly. But the point I wanted to make is that we need to be very straight. And in these conversations, I learned that I don't want women to work. Women always have work. My mother worked her butt off, and my grandmother worked, and there are a lot of people who work. We want and we must own that, and we must be able to say that out loud. We want power.
Yes.
We want to make decisions.
Yes.
We don't want to just work. We're willing to work for it, but we want a seat at the table where decisions are being made. Yeah. And that's something that women still have very much difficulty saying out loud, because wanting power is dirty.
It's dirty.
It's dirty, and it's not sexy at all.
It's not, and it's not becoming of a
Unless
woman.
in certain situations.
Well, I'm going to say, every now and then, again, that's a different podcast again. That's a different podcast again. But one we're definitely doing, by the way.
Yeah. Okay, keep you up on
that. Are you free next Thursday?
But saying that you want the power and you want to make decisions, and in a corporate situation, that can be very important to just speak out.
It can be, and I think what's very interesting right now, my experience is when you do sit at that table, yes, there's representation, and of course that's important. We need to know it's possible for it to continue to be so. What I would implore and encourage and invite and stress and beg women who are at that seat, start to make the shift and use that seat. Don't be so grateful for that seat that you are giving away your power by being the voice that goes along with it. I know when I was sitting at that table, I did not use my seat anywhere near as well as I could have or should have, and I'm sure it's influenced my professional and career decisions now, unquestionably. A sense of trying to redress that balance. But I implore women, if you have those seats, you are not there as sort of a secure vote. I feel there is almost an obligation to use that seat for change and invite change, and to be both activist and ally. And by the way, know that you can own that, and it sits right there alongside your professional expertise and capabilities, and in no way diminishes those, which I think is a great segue to my next question. Beyond everything else we've spoken about, innovator, disruptor, revolutionary, how does activism play a role in your life? I see very clearly that it does. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about how it plays a role in your life, but also what's driven it?
Well, what's driven it is first of all, my eldest daughter, there we go again, not believing in the powers that be. Like a doctor, he came from there, he's now somewhere here. Same goes for teachers. I'm very activistic in the sense of getting women in tech. My main words to companies is, don't get just one woman, not an excuse woman. We need 4, at least 4 in your team. Why 4? Because 1, she will be the queen of the guys. You don't want that. 2, they will always be fighting. There will be competition because 3, there will be 2 against 1. It's 3 is never a nice number in my opinion. And 4, then you have a group, and then you have some power, and then they can feel safe amongst themselves. And we're slowly getting to that stage, fortunately, because we have had a period where there were just solid solo women. And now from research, finally we get news that indeed they were defending their own position 100%, because they had to fight for it. And you can understand that it's so logical, but it's not fun for the next generation of women.
Absolutely.
So we need more women on board.
And it very much preserves the status quo, not just in terms of those of women in business, but the knock-on effects that it has on the broader sort of societal issues that live within a company structure. Yeah.
And I have my mother as an example, of course, but she's got 2 elder sisters who never got married and got careers, and they were great role models for me. One of them became one of the first female gynecologists, that's the English word you say. And I remember being a dispute when I was like 18 years old or something. It was really ridiculous. She came at our home for Christmas or something, and she was telling that there were some women who didn't want, she never had children herself, and they didn't want her as a doctor because she never had any children herself. She did not know how it felt to have children. So they rather went to her male colleague. I was like, what? Wait, one more time, please. Yeah?
Just for the people at the back. Can we hear that again?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and that for me was like, okay, this is really insane. And then along the way in my life, I have that eldest daughter I was talking about, that underneath there's a girl and a boy who were very close in age. They were at the same school, had the same teacher. I was there for a table night to talk about the children's performance. And first I went for her, and it was like, yeah, she's got a 6. It's not a good grade. I think like in English it's a C or something, or B, I don't know. Anyway, a 6 in the Dutch system.
I had a fair few B's and C's.
Okay,
we're fine with them.
Well, 6 is more or less. And this teacher said to me, yeah, but considering her age and when it's not there, the insight in physics, it will never come. And she's good at languages. She better has language, and a 6 is not that good. So she better not choose physics and things like that, chemistry, etc. And then I had some other teachers for other stuff. And then the end of the evening, I was with him again, talking about my son, who was just a few months, 9 months younger, and also in the same class. And he said, yeah, he's got a 6, but he's still young, and what not is can come, and he'll grow into it. And I said, do you remember what you just said? Do you have any... No, he did not remember. And of course, later he denied saying it.
Of course.
But I was, okay. And that ignited so much anger in me that I said, okay, this women in tech thing, this is a real thing, because I mean they have the same grade, and what's the difference? And then when you start noticing things like the front page of books for physics, chemistry, and mathematics, they're all male oriented, etc. Little things like that. It's all very little. So that was for me a big ignition of I want to fight for this, because this is ridiculous.
And I think a great example of how the small things build up into the big things. I know you'll know the study that shows that if a job description has 10 items that are required,
a woman will want to fill them all.
A woman will only apply if they fill them all, whereas the man, if they satisfy 2 of the criteria, great, application goes in. And I think those are very, very key distinctions, and it's important. I think sometimes there is a sense that things have moved on and it's not like that anymore. And I think the realities, and I think a corporate environment demonstrates those realities, or sort of shows them up perhaps more so than any, because it's such an intense pressure cooker environment that really plays into the current system and the status quo of the current system.
And people always want how do you say it in English, a field of peace. So when there is troubles, and often not often, but sometimes ignited by the guy making a remark to a woman, it's like, don't mention it, don't make a fuss out of it, just keep it calm, just keep it nice. And I like I said, I've had some difficulties with family members who really did some things to me, and then I said I don't want to see them anymore, and I'm going to make a big fizz out of it. And all the family was like, let it go for the sake of the goede sfeer, the overall relationships.
Don't spoil
let
the
it
day.
Rest. Don't spoil it. Don't make a fuss. And that made me so angry, because I don't believe in that. When I'm resentful, I'm sorry about that.
I mean it. But also it's a sense of gaslighting. And I think
it's not a way of solving things. Just saying, okay, let it go. It's not a way of solving. And it goes the same when you're in a company and a colleague does something to you. And if the little things are being let go, don't mention it, don't make a fuss over it. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, because he is looking for the border, for the
line. And I think that's so true. And these things stay in our systems, and they get bigger and bigger. And if you don't speak them out, again, it goes back to direct conversation and knowing your needs and owning them and feeling able to speak on them, and then moving on. It's when things really build up that it forms a resentment, and I think on a deeper level deepens existing wounds, because you're reinforcing those patterns, but sometimes you don't see how you're playing a role in that reinforcement. So I mean, it seems like you've had so many different phases of your life that you've evolved through. What is your definition of success today, and how has it changed?
It changes every day. That's my fluid part that I was speaking about. What is success for me? I've had so many people judging me, etc. So I don't want to measure my success in the sense of other people. Like, for instance, my parents-in-law weren't at my wedding because they didn't like me as a wife of my husband. So that formed me in a sense that it made me more self-aware. Yeah. So there's now only a few people that really need to love me. When I die, there only have to be a few people. I don't want to everybody can come who wants to come, but there's importance is only the children. So my success is if my children love me. Yeah. If my children think of me with warm heart and with great lessons, that's enough for me. But of course, I like as a successful thing, I'd like to leave something behind in the sense that I did some good stuff. I empowered some women. I improved some lives. I teach Dutch to these Syrian people, and they learn very little Dutch from me, but they learn how to be human again. That's what one of them said, and that makes me proud. So I see that as a big success, that one of those boys that is being given up by society comes to me and said, I didn't learn a word Dutch, but I learned how to be human again. That's what
beautiful. It's I don't know what could be more pure and more meaningful in terms of a return.
Yeah.
I don't know what in terms of what you've put out and then what you get back in. I think that's an astounding example and speaks volumes to who you are and the impact you are unquestionably and undoubtedly leaving. I feel like I would love to give the readers just something to take home, a tool, an example, something that you have implemented or you reach to that preserves your peace, that helps you stay within your sense of self enough to achieve that definition of success or the current definition of success for wherever you are in your process.
So you want me to...
So if there's a tool or a something that either brings you peace, perhaps it's where your parents live and knowing that that's there, it's your family, perhaps it's chocolate, perhaps it's meditation, or if there's one thing that you go back to when you've, or perhaps if you're feeling off center, you're like, okay, I need to do
that. Yeah, I need contemplation, very much so. Yeah. I'm a little bit... I never was diagnosed with it, but I know that I'm a little bit ADHD, can be very busy. So my husband always says,
actually, just go on TikTok. I self-diagnosed through TikTok.
Oh,
so it's
okay.
Fine.
Well, I love. I don't need to diagnose in that sense, but I love it because every time I have a depression, the ADHD saves me. Because when I'm very down and depressed and I see a butterfly, I forget to be depressed. So don't take that away from me. But no, my husband says I need my contemplation time. So when I have a big keynote or a big thing coming up, he says, I know I have to leave you alone and you have to cocoon in yourself. So I'm either on the swing in the garden or whatever. So take your time for yourself. It's very important. Just take that silence in yourself. A good night rest is very important in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And I love animals. I have a dog, and dogs aren't judgmental. They just love you. As long as you feed them, they love you. That's so easy.
and it's such a pure, consistent, unwavering adoration.
Exactly.
And yes, I also have a dog, and he that piece I understand. And last question. What's your anthem? What's your fight part song? What's that song that you hear it and your chest goes and you feel like you can just win the war?
Oh God, that's a difficult question. I don't think I have one song. I'm crazy about George Michael. He's been a great inspiration throughout my life.
Amazing.
Not so much for his songs, although I must say that "Praying for Time" is a very important song in my life. I was brought up religious, and in that song, he says that God is looking at all his children walking out the back door because nobody wants to love each other anymore, wants to take the time for each other anymore. So it's been a great lesson song in that sense. And also his life, of course, being loved by so many and still dying. We saw it just now with Matthew Perry again.
It's tragic.
Being loved by so many and then dying all by yourself. Why are we looking for success or from judges from other people? I mean... Yeah. Just love each other. Just love each other.
Love each other and love yours and learn whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Learn to, even if you can't love yourself, be so okay with yourself.
Just love the world and love the creation. So yeah, I don't have that particular fight song, but I have these contemplative songs of George Michael.
Beautiful.
From,
that are your go-to.
Yeah, that I'll go to and just contemplate and say, okay, well, it will all pass.
I think that's, but I think I think fight song, if your success is peace or getting through the next thing, I think that is a beautiful example.
Yeah, thank you.
Lieke, I want to thank you so much for coming here today. You have been so vulnerable, so honest, so informative. I am so excited that the listeners get to hear all of your pearls. You've given us so much to think about and so many lessons. We're so grateful to have your wisdom, to have your presence, and to have you fighting for us in our corner. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my great pleasure. Really an honor.
Thanks for listening to The Business of Being a Woman, and tune in to the next episode. We'll see you soon.